Hello again everyone. Well, it's about time we got on and replaced the coil springs in the Celica so we can get it through the MOT. These are the new coil springs I've got. They're Vogeteeland springs. Or the Land springs. Anyway, we'll only be using the front ones to get it through the MOT. Might put the back ones on later, but it's the front spring that's broken. I've also got some new drop links just in case we have problems getting the old ones off and have to cut them off. Yeah, so what Mr. Safety Owl has asked me to point out is that I'm not a trained mechanic and this isn't really intended as a how-to video. This is just a video log of what I'm doing to keep my car on the road. So if you're considering a similar sort of repair, then there might be a few things in here that help you, but if you're not confident in your ability to perform this sort of repair, then you're much better off taking your car to a qualified mechanic. First thing to do, of course, is to jack up the car and remove the wheel. Now, of course, we know that it's a good 4 years since any of these were undone. So, as early as possible, I'm going to give these a good old soaking in the trusty Plus Gas. Especially the bottom end of the drop link down here. And under here, this little nut and bolt that holds the, if I can get it. There we go, that holds the brake hose on. Now next I really want to take this little bracket that holds the brake line onto the strut off, so let's do that. Handy at this stage to have a little takeaway tub or something to keep the nuts and bolts in. There's the second one to take off here with a 10mm spanner. Next we have to take off these 19mm bolts that hold the bottom of the strut onto the rest of the steering thing. The thingy. Yeah, these are usually pretty tight. But I did them up last time, so I only got myself to blame, I suppose. But then again, probably best if they don't come undone while you're going along. Right, now we have to go under the bonnet. Now we want to take this rubber cap off and undo the nut underneath. Mr. Safety Owl has a good point here. He says that obviously you shouldn't undo that top nut all the way because you'll release the tension in the spring under normal circumstances. I'm only able to do that here because my spring is already broken, so the tension is released. It is very important when you're working with coil springs to be very careful. People have been quite seriously injured by coil springs in the past. There's a lot of stored energy there, and if you accidentally suddenly release it, then it could really hurt you quite badly. And we can also loosen these three at the top there. I won't take them off yet though. Mr. Ginge is supervising from his usual spot on the scrapper carpet in the garage. You've been rolling in the mud, boy. You're all gritty and manky. He likes to roll in the dust on a hot day, don't you, boy? Right, well, next we've got to take these drop links off. You can see they're on with this arrangement here. You put a hex key in there and then turn this 14mm nut there, but generally the hex thing rounds off and you're left just spinning it round in the end of the drop link, and you have to resort to cutting them off. So I've given it a good soaking, and there's another end exactly the same down here but facing the other way. So we'll see how we get on. Well, there we go. Rather uncharacteristically, we managed to get the whole drop link out without having to cut anything. Splendid. Righto, now I can finish taking off these bolts that we loosened earlier. Now, with a bit of wiggling, I should be able to get the whole setup out of the car. There we go. I'll put this aside. And let's have a look at this. Oh dear. Now, of course, what I should have said earlier is that normally you wouldn't undo the top mount all the way off the shock like I did there, but there's no tension in this spring at all because it's broken. When we do the other side, we'll have to leave that top mount on, otherwise the whole thing will just spring apart, and that's quite important. You don't want it all springing apart because there's quite a lot of power stored in this spring, so it could injure you quite badly. So yeah, very important. I should have said that. Leave that nut on, under normal circumstances. It was perfectly obvious there's no pressure at all in this spring. It's flopping around. Yeah, look at that. That's definitely a broken end on the bottom of the spring there. You look at it in the comparison to new ones, you can see we're not really missing much, but it's enough to have taken all the tension out of that strut. Well, while we've got this off the car, let's take the opportunity to give it a good old clean up. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give them these a rough clean up. We're not really going to have time to thoroughly refurbish them, and it's probably not worth it anyway. I mean, you just buy new shocks, I guess, if you were too worried about the finish on them. I have noticed a couple of things though. Firstly, this seat for the spring is quite damaged. You can see the broken end has rubbed through there, and generally the rubber is quite cracked and in poor condition. The gaiter thing is split. Now, I had to get new ones of these last time I changed the springs 4 years ago, so these do seem to suffer a bit. And this sort of bump stop thing as well has quite a nasty split all the way around the top of it. None of which I think would really be desperately bad if we put it all back together again. It would probably pass the MOT, but it would be nice to see if I can source some replacements for those. And it's probably safe to assume we get them in pairs and do the other side as well. Right, well, it's some time later and I've actually got all the bits arrived now that I need to rebuild the strut. I've got the new springs, which I had already, the new spring seats, the dust cover and the bump stop. So let's go ahead and put that together. Well, first thing to go on, of course, is our lovely new spring seat. So that can just drop over there quite nicely. That fits well. Now, we're not going to get much further without compressing the spring. So because this one isn't broken that we're replacing, we're going to have to get the spring compressors out. So these are my lovely spring compressors. They're just from Halfords, they're nothing particularly special. I've got this nice 1/2-inch drive bit in the top, so you can just use your ratchet to tighten them up. I'll put them on the spring sort of fairly evenly apart and tighten them up nice and evenly as well, because I don't want to get the spring all distorted and more tension in one side than the other. I'll also check after I've got them a little bit tight that I can actually get to everything I need to when I assemble the spring back on the strut, because if I put them in the wrong place when I go to release them, I might not be able to get at the drives and things. So I'll just check that as well. We just have to watch where the end of the sort of stud bit is going to end up as well. Well, here we go. We've got our spring compressed, so the top of it is below the seat where the top bearing sits on, and we've got the bottom of the spring in the little step in the rubber seat and matching the little step in the seat on the shock absorber itself. Next thing to go on is, of course, our bump stop. Then our boot. And then this top plate. Now this top plate, you can see on the top surface of it has this little arrow. And when you put it on the top, you have to get that arrow lined up, pointing to the outside of the car as the strut will be mounted. So pointing in the same direction as these mounting holes. And of course you want to make sure the little rubber tags on the boot match up with the little fold down tabs on that top plate. Then of course you can put your top bearing back on. Make sure you've got this little cover for your bearing. You could also take the opportunity to grease that bearing. This one is okay, I think. I think I can add much grease to that. Now of course we can put the nut back on the top. Now this nut is a nylock nut, so if you're doing a Rolls-Royce job I guess you could replace this, but I haven't got a new one, so I'm afraid the old one is going back on again. And don't worry about getting that super tight, because we can tighten it up properly when it's back in the car. Now I can undo the spring compressors and release the tension on that spring. But you can see what I mean. This one I can get to okay, but this one here I can't get into, so I have to use the adjustable spanner to release that one. There we go, there's my lovely finished strut. And now I can put it straight back in the car. I'm not going to do these ones up properly tight, or indeed the top ones properly tight, until I've got the drop link on. And then we can tighten everything up fully. I've got these lovely new drop links, so although there's nothing wrong with the old ones, might as well put these new ones on, eh? Well, it's probably a good idea if these nuts don't come undone while I'm driving along, so I'm going to tighten them with my torque wrench to the specified 113 foot-pounds. these strut turn ups to a much more civilised 29 foot-pound. We can also pop this rubber cap back on now. Then last but not least, we want to put the brake hose and the ABS pipe thingamajiggy back on there. Well, there we go, that's one side effectively done, apart from putting the wheel back on, of course. Now, it's starting to lose the daylight now, so I think I'll pack away and hopefully carry on later in the week. Well, young Mia has helped me put the tyre back on and turn the car around and start on the other side. So we've got as far as removing the strut. We had a bit of a problem with starting the car the couple of weeks that it sat here waiting for me to get my act together and do all this. The battery's gone flat, so also got the battery on charge there. Oh, Mr. Safety Owl is really concerned about this one, isn't he? He's asked me to point out that although it can be great fun for children to help with this sort of thing, be quite careful in the tasks you ask them and get them to do. Make sure they're not exposed to any mechanical hazards, trapping their fingers, that sort of thing, sharp edges, bits and pieces like that, and make sure they're not exposed to any nasty chemicals, oils, greases and stuff. I was quite careful in the little bits and pieces that I got Mia to help me with. And because this spring isn't broken, we've removed the whole strut intact. So although we've loosened the top nut here by a couple of turns, we haven't removed it because we don't want to release the tension on the spring and cause a bit of a disaster. We'll take that all off with the spring compressors and rebuild this strut the same as we did on the other side with the new spring. Oh, well, that's that done. Wasn't too bad really, but have a look at the old springs here. Yeah, I've lined them up so they're roughly in the same position. You can see there's probably about from there round snapped off the passenger side one, and just that bit snapping off was enough to make the spring quite loose and floppy. Took all the tension out of it, so that's why she failed the MOT. Right, well, today is Bank Holiday Monday, so all that remains really is to book it in tomorrow for a retest of the MOT. Well, that's all for now. If you enjoyed it, press like. Subscribe if you want to see some more. And ring the bell to be notified when we upload something new.